Hey guys, let's have a talk about all the concerns about Gwent that I can think of. And I'm gonna offer some ideas how to fix it, but the main purpose of this video is to just spark a conversation about it. And I originally intended this video to be split up in like 5 parts. But I believe it's gonna make more sense like this because the issues kinda build on top of each other. And first order of business, we're gonna talk about the state of the meta. A little bit like state of Gwent, but let's just say state of the meta. And meta in Gwent is, for the most part, is very finisher based. Pretty tempo driven as well. Well, the thing is, Gwent is set up in a way that first round you got 10 cards, plus mulligan, plus leader, so it's 11 plus the mulligan, it's pretty good. Then the following rounds you get 2, then 1 card. So as long as you have the most power in the least amount of cards, and because it usually goes 2-1, you can probably win the game. As long as you can extend the early rounds. So if, for example, if you ran a finisher deck, but like for example you were like you got really punished like round 1 and had to give up or whatever, had to go down 2. Even going down 2 is not terrible, but if you had to give up for some reason, then okay, like the value generating deck is doing fine against you, but most of the time that is not the case. That's why Gwent is pretty ruled by the decks that can get the most power in like 2 or 3 cards, because that's how strong you are. And while some decks, actually only one deck, can really keep up with the value generation, can generate a lot of value if given the chance, I would argue it's pretty damn hard to do. And also, if your opponent has any weather counters against Harald, he's the only guy who has any reasonable value generation currently. He's gonna be shut down. But most of the time it's just like you're playing like 20-point bear dudes plus another Olaf plus Ciri Nova. That's actually just the weaker one. Or maybe you're playing a reveal deck with like buff spotters and you're like dropping like 26, 29, 30-point spotters at the end. That's again one of the better win conditions if you want to go for that. The Necker deck. The Necker deck is probably one of the most savage ones. It's really hard to calculate how much it's capable of doing, but I think you can easily push 70 plus on the 3 cards. I think it's like 100 is even possible in some cases in 3 cards. And of course the Dwarf deck is pretty decent as well, I suppose. Ciri Nova is it's one of the popular inclusions in decks these days. So, like, it's partly because of how Gwent works, and I don't encourage or just wanna like want the devs to change how Gwent works, because I think it's fine how it works, but I do wanna see more combo, more value generation, most of all, pop up and be viable, because mostly the value generation is just a bit slow. And the value generation decks really need to force the game early on, so they can actually win round 3 against finisher decks. But hopefully we're gonna see other type of decks. Of course, this is a bit of a simplification. Some value generation decks, for example, have finishers in them, but they tend to not have as strong of a finishers as the true finisher decks. Anyway, this was just more of a preface for what kind of decks we see these days. Kind of brings up the removals and interactivity part of the discussion. Is that most decks these days tend to be pretty passive. And I can't say I'm too happy with that. And to be fair, CDPR is fully to be blamed for this, because they tend to just make the removal worse. The only removal that really pops up. Even from back then, it's Scorch. It just keeps coming back. It's a good card. Partial because it doesn't have a cap. Partial because some other bullshit I'm gonna talk about a little bit later. But we can just look at it. Actually, special cards are subpar in the first place. I'm not sure why they're doing this. For example, we got Swallow. It's boosted by 10. So the base, I'm talking base bronze power right now is 12. The ideal bronze power is more like 14, 15. That's kind of what you want from when you're comboing your bronzes. But the base you want is 12. And this is a 10. And they kind of want, CD is kind of want the special cards to be used along other units, I suppose. Not just by themselves. And we can see that they value removal higher than boost. Boost is really not that great considering you can just like reset it. But like, sure, like boost, fine. But we have also Thunder here, which is a 9. So basically, like that's kind of thing. Like specials are give or take a -2. And removal is like a -1. And we do see this pop up like in other places as well. We got this very disappointing man. Like they just released this like, oh yeah, 7+4. Isn't this great? And there is more problem with this guy than just the fact that it's underpowered. Because like 11, this is trash, obviously trash. But there's more problems with it. The fact that, especially units that deal damage in one chunk, tend to be pretty bad. The better removals are like, as I mentioned, Scorch, and for example, Imperial Enforcer deals 2 damage for each spying enemy. It doesn't do 2 damage. For example, it deals whatever. It's 0+2 for each spying enemy on one target, doesn't matter. Deals 2 damage for each spying enemy on one target, doesn't really matter. Point is, it can hit multiple targets. And that is, or just can just like really be smart about how you damage people. And that's pretty important. I would say like, as far as removals go, like this is one of the better ones, clearly. Because it hits in like chunks of 2, and that's pretty damn important. And even Ulcer is like a bit weird one because it deals 9 damage. And many cards are guilty of this. I'm gonna really go into why this is more of a problem. First of all, players, especially with the new keyword immune, players are not really eager to play units that can be removed and you just get no value. Like we got this Kedden Revenant. Like, do you want to play this? Like 4 power? Like this is trash. Like this needs to be played, stay on the board, and then you play 3 spells for it to be worth it. If you play 2 spells, it's trash. If you play, well, you need to play on average more than 2 spells to be good. And we even see this with the faction cards. That we have Tormented Mage, who looks at 2 bronze spells or items from your deck, then play 1. Like, wow! Like, faction spells are really good, right? Wrong. Bloody Flail, still trash. Like, what's this tennis? Like, come on. This could easily be a 6+6, and it would be still meh. That's it. It would be still meh. And this guy could be easily like a 12, but that's not the point. The point is like dealing exact damage is usually pretty useless. Like let's just say for example you're hunting a trebuchet. Adernia Muller, yeah, you can kill it with 2 Adernia Mullers. That's actually a good example here. let's just say that, but most of the time that's not gonna happen. For example, let's just say you are running an Ancient Foglet. Let's just say you don't even have fog on the board, but you play this for 10, and your opponent holds an Altus Thunder. That's bad. So that's not gonna be great. So that's obviously under useful range. And if you cannot deny value with your removal, or you don't even have target for your removal, that's extra consideration as well. For example, let's just say Altus Thunder did like 1000 damage, but your opponent only has like dudes that have 8 power. And that's clearly bad, right? Like you just don't get a lot of value from it. You're actually getting less value from it than if you play just some half-elf hunter or whatever. So it's not great. So like damage is a lot more conditional, and I do see that the devs seemingly realize that they need to up the damage. Well, we see that the old cards follow this formula. The new cards they added, the Mahakameal boosts random ally in each show by 4. And they added Crow's Eye, deal 4 damage to the highest enemy on each show, deal 1 extra damage for each copy of this card in your graveyard. So this is basically like, the first one is like a 12 best case scenario, next one is a 15, and the other one is a 18. So it averages out like a 15. But out of these 2 cards, this is still the more popular one. And I'm not surprised by any means. Like, this is conditional. Like, unless, like, okay, you can even get good value with this, but it's obviously situational. And at this point, it's just like, are you gonna get value from it? Like, if you're hitting 2, it's obviously not good. But I'm more like wanna touch on the point that it's kind of hard to have like exactly the damage points for that target to be good. Like, look at this, like Wyvern, like same trash, like 6 plus 5. Let's just say, like, perfect example. Let's just say you're up against the Imperial Enforcers and you have Wyverns. Like, what is that trash you're holding? Like, seriously. Like, I'm not even pointing it out that this one is like 10 times better, but like, it's like, what? It has 6 power, you can kill it, and sometimes it's just an overkill on the unit, but that's less of a concern, but still a concern, I suppose. I'm just saying that removal should be upped, and in many other card games, actually every other card game, board clear and removal is actually stronger than in Gwent. Actually, the closed beta had a lot stronger removal. For example, you had Frost, you could frost everything, you can just frost an entire board. And you can just like, even kill it. Like, that was crazy. You could just like throw a Rotasser, and the cow is there, the row is frosted, and like everything dies. Like, row clear, right there. Of course, that sounds kind of crazy. Like, imagine this, like, instead of deal 3 damage to all units, it would be like, deal 10 damage to all units, obviously. Crazy, but my point is, like, we do see very passive decks in the meta, and I don't think removal is that far behind, but many removals are just pretty damn awkward. Like, look at this, Arrakis Venom. Like, of course I can point out like boost cards that are kind of weird too. Like, this is on the same level, but setting up a boost 6 random ally situation is a lot easier than deal 2 damage to 6 random enemies. So in this scenario, this is obviously a superior card, and and against the Mahakameal and Crow's Eye, still Mahakameal is the superior card. And Arrakis Venom is just a weird one that you sometimes use with the word hack, just in case, but that's it. Maybe Kira too. Yeah, Kira. But this is not something you would put in your deck, ever. And yeah, I would like to see removals to get stronger, to be actually like decent. Like currently the removals are pretty conditional. Like the point is, the main point here is that it requires a lot bigger setup, and not from you, but from your opponent, because the units have different tags. It doesn't say when you like hover over them, but let's just bring up one of them that I can consider. There are, for example, let's just bring up Ancient Foglet. So what is this? It says Necrophage, but this is a value generator. This is a decent value generator because you play the Fog, you play the Ancient Foglet, and it gets strong in a reasonable rate. However, the Fog is a bit weak, and I'm gonna talk about that as well. Many cards are lagging behind in the power level. But that's not what I want to say right now. Is that this card can act as an opener. You can play it on your board always. It's fine. Well, not really always. Obviously, this is bad if you don't have a Fog, but you can just place it on the board. It's fine. Unlike some cards that you really want to use alongside. Like, for example, even if you have like a... where's that? Rot Fiend. And this is not really an opener. This is something you want to play late when you know where the opponents are. So you can, when you blow up the Rot Fiend, because it's only the opposite row. So this is not an opener. So this could be a value generator opener. Obviously this is weak to be a finisher. So, but most damage cards, I'm not even sure if I can find one here that actually stands for damage. This is just setting up the weather. If you're just looking around the monsters, there's nothing here, and the ice troll is trash. So not much here, and the Wyvern is obviously trash as well. This is a conditional damage card. That's like a 12, but I know I'm not gonna talk about specific units too much here. And I guess this kind of brings us to our next topic. Is it's kind of like the win condition. Like, how do you win? And of course, we got this finisher and value generation. And it kind of brings up the rounds. Because in Gwent, like, obviously the player who goes second is does have a crazy advantage. He is in control of the game. The first player is just fighting to get it. The second player already has it. And Gwent does tend to be in a weird spot because the free rounds tend to be weird. I kind of covered this win condition a little bit earlier with like Harald and the finisher and the value generation, because value generation is not in a great spot right now. We can see, for example, I just bring up Fog. I just talked about Fog earlier. Like, let's just say you play this. Like, how long it takes for this to be good? We know that we can drop down just naked 12s on the board. And we know that we can, like, for example, Dwarven Agitator plus Dwarven Skirmisher, that's a 14. That's pretty easy. Like, so the ideal bronze strength is like 14, 15, and the base bronze strength is 12. So what the hell is Fog? Well, you do this and you apply 2 damage right away. And how long it takes for it to be like a 14? That's 6 more turns, right? So this becomes break even in 7 turns. And keep in mind, all the turns, all the extra, all the extra rounds, all the extra turns that pass count too. So for example, let's just go Trebuchet. So you might say like, oh, Trebuchet, this is kind of like okay. And let's just say your opponent goes first, just to present a favorable scenario. You play this, it's a 9, then it hits like 3 more times, it becomes a 12. So in 4 turns it's a 12, if you consider that's base, but if you consider 14, doesn't really matter. If you consider 12, in the scenario of the fog, it would still take 6 turns for it to be a break even. This is either a 4 or 7. This obviously has less value generation, but it doesn't really matter right now. The point is, if you run 3 of these in your deck, then the first one you're gonna drop is gonna be like good in like 4 to 7 rounds, depending on what you want to count. But I think you should at least consider like 14 power bronzes to be the ones you're gonna include. So let's just say 6th round. The next one is gonna be 7th round because 1 round already passed, and the next one after is gonna be 8 because 2 rounds already passed. So like, yeah, value generation is a bit slow, in my opinion, especially with this new bronze strength. Of course, some of them are just complete joke trash, like I don't know, like this guy, Temerian Drummer, 5+6 boost. Of course, you can't really consider this as the base. The only reason I really brought up the Agitator plus a Skirmisher combo, which is like, it's like easy. Like, we can just bring up something else. We can bring up Agitator plus Mahakam Guard. Sure, doesn't even need a target, so you can just play an Agitator, Mahakam Guard, you get 14 points. I'm not saying this is an OP combo by any means, not at all. I'm just kind of pointing it out that this is kind of the base you gotta consider. And the value generating decks are pretty slow, and we can consider how many cards you got, because first you start with 10 cards, plus your leader, plus you're gonna draw 3 cards, so that's 14. So, like, that means 14 turns are gonna pass, give or take, and that's gonna be like split up. Even if it's gonna be like 7 turns first round, nothing second round, and 7 turns last round, guess what? You're still not fast enough. The value generation is still kind of slow. Again, Harald is the only one that can really generate a lot of value fast. Also, like, Harald kind of you can just play Harald with the X-Men, and that's pretty good. But yeah, most value generation in the game is super slow. I believe the best one, other than Harald, has to go for the Ancient Foglet, because you can play Ancient Foglet, nothing happens, then you play the Fog, then the Ancient Foglet buff. So it's technically gets to be base, 12 base, in 3 rounds. You gotta consider all the rounds that you do nothing, or maybe you have to tempo. You gotta consider all the rounds that pass, your value generation suffers. So if you don't play this for 3 rounds, then it's still a card that you gotta consider, and you just sacrifice those 3 rounds to not have value generation. And this becomes kind of okay in like 3 rounds, becomes like a 14 in like 5, so it's not bad. Like, this is the guy that I would say, like, conditional, like, okay, this is the, I'm gonna give it to you if Fog didn't suck. But kinda the Vetter does suck. And the main reason that's kinda keeping Vetter relevant is the complete disrespect players are showing toward Vetter. Because, let's just see, like, Clear has that from on its show. You got pretty good single target Vetter clears, but no one cares about these. You get like ridiculously good, like, AoE Vetter clears on, like, clearing Vetter on everything and getting boost for it. That's, of course, again, really, really good. Even on the guys that were not damaged by Vetter. So if you, for example, some reason end up damaging a lot of units, and you Ragnarok your opponent, then he's gonna play First Light, and he's gonna, let's just say, like 10 units for wounded. That's 20 points. So Yeah, good luck with that. So Weather for the most part is reserved for trash, actually. Because Weather can never be good, because the Weather counters are fucking insane. And players are even hesitant to play Silver Mages. You can always play a Silver Mage and like, it's okay, you know, you get like some special, plus like, it's okay. Like, and then just in case you run into a Weather deck, they just auto lose because you have a Silver Mage. So it's not great. At least if you're a Weather deck. And don't get me wrong, I bloody love Weather. Ask anybody. I love the Weather decks, but I think at this point, like, maybe removal is, well, removing the Weather is probably the least of their concerns. It's just most value generation is just not fast enough. And of course, it's true that some, like, of course, there's straight up point cards. Many straight up point cards are trash too. Like, I just brought up this guy because, like, this is just like, basically become, I don't know, this is just trash. I'm not really sure why CDPR decided to make cards like these. At one point, CDPR was committed to making all cards relevant, but in the last patch, they seem to made a shift that they say like, you know what, some cards just gonna suck. And the players just said like, yeah, we're cool with that. I'm kind of cool with it too, but like, I'm not really, like, why? Like, is this really what the new players gonna love? They're near Maulers plus Tiberian Drummers? They're just gonna get destroyed and owned. If anything, just gonna show them how boring the game is. Maybe not so much, but I don't know. They're not gonna do any wonders with these cards. Like, Tiberian Drummer, come on. I just feel like it's like a wasted opportunity to have a decent card. If anything, like, even if it's a boring card, can we just make it competitive? So it's like, it can be like, I don't know, like, it can be not as interesting, but can it be at least like a 6+6? So like, at least it's, I don't know, somewhat usable. Maybe you want to buff up something that you're afraid that it's gonna die, or I don't know. You probably it's not gonna see play, but like, there's literally no reason for this trash to be even below 12. So I don't get that. So yeah, value generation is a bit slow, and I suppose many of the like a single target cards is like single cards are not suited for finishers as well. Like, many times you're just like duking it out with some like pretty good cards, but at the end you just really want the heavy hitters, and Gwent certainly has those. And I think the concern is that many of the heavy hitters are really not conditional whatsoever. So for example, I don't really have a problem with well, it's a very strong card, but I don't have a massive problem with Yorvet Meditation, because like, this is not something you like. It can have crazy value, but it's not something you play last. Like, it's probably not gonna get value last, but some cards are just like, yeah, I can drop down a Xavier Moran, that's fine. Also, you can just drop down a Bear, you can drop down a Siri Nova. And these unconditional big drops are just what people save for last round, always. And it would be nice to really, I don't know, just somewhat at least force it out. So, in my opinion, the win condition is heavily favoring the finisher decks right now. And while we do see some play from Harald, it's not too relevant. But actually, I'm not touching on one part of the topic yet, and I kind of have to bring up the rounds, because because that was the rounds that, you know, you just fight. And round 2, for first 2 rounds is basically setting up a short round 3 most of the time. And many times round 2 sucks. Either it's a open pass, or a spy abuse central, or just bleed your opponent. And And I suppose it can be argued that, hey, whatever, that's unique and fun in Gwent. Well, I don't know, like, I don't know, what would you say? I don't know if anyone would say that. Round 2 is a bit weird, of course. Round 1 is just like, probably, yeah, round 1 is probably a big fight. Usually a big fight because probably the player 1 wants to get control of the game, especially in these times when the opponent player can just throw you a lot of spies. And that's the other best way to have a insanely strong win condition, is to have most cards. And getting card advantage in Gwent is usually pretty damn hard. Like, for example, Siri Nova. Wow, good luck with that. Aquist. Wow, the praying for you, dragon, for you to trigger. But when it comes to Spies, it's pretty easy. And you can say, like, but the Spies have a downside. Sometimes they don't. And that just brings us to the fourth part of the discussion. It's Spies and card advantage. And I suppose I can just ask you, like, how do you feel about Spies? How do you feel about the power of Spies? And do the power of the Spies matter at all? Because many times it does not. Because, for example, if you win round 1 and you get to round 2 and you just think to yourself, like, oh man, I can play 3 spies here and that's gonna be awesome, and you just throw out the spies and it doesn't really matter how much power they have. Especially if you have Scorch. Scorch is a card that really comes back all the time, and I said I'm gonna mention it, I'm gonna mention it. Scorch is totally fine if it hits 1 unit, I think it's totally fine. But when it hits multiple units, especially the ones that your opponent cannot he can't really play around it, right? For example, like, Scorch is basically single-handedly responsible for invalidating many archetypes. For example, if you like play a bunch of spotters, you play 2 spotters, fucking game over, you get scorched. And you could say, like, oh, but you should only play like 1 spotter, but that's just dumb as hell. My point is, if you run into a Scorch deck, then that just doesn't really matter. Like, you have a choice of either not playing that archetype. If Scorch is in the meta, many archetypes are out of the meta. And the downside of the Scorch is that sometimes you can't use it, but the massive upside is that if it hits more than 1, it's game over for the opponent, usually. And I think it would be totally fine as a card. I would prefer it as a card that only hit 1. But this is about Spies and card advantage. But however, Scorch ties into this because you sometimes see that, you know, it's spy, 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 and it gets burnt down. And that's a big problem. But it's actually not even that important, because Gwent is a game where you must play a card. Must play a card every turn. And that's why Spies are super powerful. But Spies are actually not the only way to gain card advantage. And I suppose, like, this just makes winning the first round and being in control of the game even more powerful. And the reason I'm saying that the power level of Spies don't matter is because if for example, the Spies had the power level 25, would that make a difference? Let's just say you can play at like minus 25 spies, but if you play like 3 of them in a long round, like, it doesn't matter because your opponent has to keep playing cards. It might even give you a bonus if you can scorch them all at the end. And it's just really hard to balance, I feel like. I just don't see how it's gonna be balanced at all. And some of you did say that spies are fine. When we had 1 spy, it was fine. And I disagree strongly. Because spies, even when we had 1, it was usually like, hey, I go first. Do I have a spy? No, I lost. Or, hey, I go first. The other player goes second. He had people play the spy. fuck, I lost the game. And Spies were always an auto-include in almost all decks. The only decks that don't auto-include Spies, at least those are mine, almost true for none of those. The only ones that don't auto-include Spies have Altus double crossing to pull out some special unit that probably sets up a crazy finisher that possibly makes it possible to even win with a card down. Last deck that I played like this was Deathwish Phoenix. The one before, I don't even know, because just put in the Spies, okay? And Spies are not the only ones responsible for like fucking bullshit card advantage as well. Because carryover kind of serves this purpose as well. And card advantage should be, yeah, like very carefully balanced. Let's just say that. Because let's just say you are running against the scoia'tael. This is a very common thing these days. And you win round 1, very important. Possibly you had to fight as the player going first, and you won. It was hard. Then the scoia'tael player, round 2, throws down an Elven Wardancer. So he just, okay, he got 3 points by having this in the deck and mulliganing away. Like, no problem, right? No. He just played, if you're forced to play, if your plan was to, if your plan was to go all in second turn, no matter what, with all your cards, he only got plus 3 points, nothing changed. But, if your plan was to open pass, or play a spy and pass, you are screwed. Because even if you play a spy, he can just play back the spy. Some of them actually have a summoning portal. But the point is, when this card prevents the open pass, therefore the card advantage, this becomes a plus 3 spy that you don't have a play. This is basically your opponent playing a shoop on the board. And that's kind of a problem. And I'm all for carryover as long as it doesn't mess with the card advantage. And I don't have a solution. Actually, CDPR had a solution in regards to Ronvid. I think they did a really good one here. And he's only 1 point. And if you want to go for the open pass against a no-round player, you can. Ronvid is not gonna block that, and that's pretty damn important. And despite the power buff, this made Ronvid much worse. Much worse. Because the main power, like, he was okay by himself, but main part of his powers was still that you can gain a card advantage. And when you just get, like, you can slap any kind of a carryover card, possibly the tag draw a card, it's a bit of a problem. Of course, Borgvarg and Orgild are the most common offenders, and I really don't have a solution for this. I truly don't. But this is a major problem, because forcing your opponent to play, again, when you play this as a, when you play the Elven Wardancer as a positive free spy, just by mulliganing it away, there's a problem. Because you're sacrificing, you're just playing like a silver as a minus 13 most of the time to get the same effect. And actually you wouldn't get the same effect with that, because your opponent would just like, oh yeah, you still gotta play a card, but because this is a plus, you can just pass. And your opponent has to choose, like, assuming his plan was to open pass, he has to choose, do I want to race that person? So I overcome Wardem's strength at any point, and I pass, and your opponent, and it's gonna be an equal round 3, or you pass right away, and this was just straight up a card draw. Your opponent preserved the card just because he played the War Dancer. And this is an insane situation to be in, frankly. And probably it's pretty hard to rush down a scoia'tael player, so they're not gonna really struggle with tempo. So Evan Wardens is just really good. I just really pointing out that any kind of carryover is card advantage, and card advantage needs to be very carefully managed. And I do not have a solution for the War Dancer or any kind of other card advantage that could possibly just lead to preserving a card advantage. Because, like, it of course, like, we can bring up, like, Mahakam Defender, but obviously, like, it's kind of crappy, like, in a way, I suppose. But when it also, if it also said, like, draw a card, yeah, it would be better. Anyway, the spy abuse is truly a concern. And I'm not really sure what suggestions the players have. I personally think that even like one spy is a bit iffy, because players are way too eager to even play it in rounds that they intend to win. So I would personally love to see the cards change, the spies change, the card advantage spies change from their current version to actually, so when you play it as a spy, there will be two versions of it. Either you play it on your board as a vanilla. Can we just go for like some I don't know if I can select all of them. Yeah. Can I? Nah, it doesn't really matter. So you either play this as a vanilla on your board as a 13, or you throw it in as a spy, same effects, same everything, one additional condition that you passed around. Simple as that. So it's over for you. So when you play the spy, it's a game. You are kind of forfeiting that round in a way, because I just don't want to see that that spy abuse. Just people like throwing you the spies all day long, and it leads to problems. I'm not even sure how like, the thing is, like, balancing their power is not gonna work. Even the spies could be even like 40, and they would still serve the same purpose. Like, okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it kind of stands that, you know, let's just say like they're 25 and you're just throwing in the 25 spies. That's how you're gonna do. Like, you play like 325 spies second round, and you end up getting like 2 card advantage. It doesn't matter how strong they are. Your opponent must play a card, and that's the problem. In some cases, it's actually better than they are stronger. They also tend to be abused with, like, well, it's not crazy strong, but for example, Taylor tends to be abused with the cavalry. Of course, I'm calling it abuse, like, it's incorrect. It's not. We can call it clever play, doesn't really matter what we call it. The point is, I don't really believe the cavalry was intended to be used in such a way that you set it up. I think it's kind of cool if your opponent has to, like, consciously think about, like, okay, I'm gonna stay below 20, but actually many times the Northern Realm has a 20 plus finisher. So against such a deck, you gotta say, like, I just gotta pop it at one time, or else my Northern Realm opponent is just gonna win it. Because it doesn't matter if you're gonna win with, well, in the lead with 20 points, then, for example, oh hell, I just play these guys. Like, your opponent plays a Foltus plus buff these guys up, so it's a 21. So if your opponent has this and intends to play this last, then you know that you gotta play into the dumb banner at some point. I think that's fine. I think it would be even more fine if that was avoidable. I'm not saying the dumb banner is strong. I'm just saying that the spies, like the spies playing into just setting up plays. It's actually, that's just one example, but of course we saw in the past that spies into Hailstorm Lacerate, negating the spy value basically, or like spy spam into Scorch, and again, like you just negating the spy value, making it a lot more viable to be played in an active round. Of course, the spy could be awkward sometimes if you can't deal with them, but they are definitely a questionable card, and you definitely don't want to be in a position, because if you end up in a position where you're card down last round, or like probably at any point, you can only rely on a better finisher than your opponent. And even that is kind of hard to do. So it's tricky. That's why I kind of thought about perhaps an alternative pass system. I don't think Gwent is past maybe core changes to it, but of course it needs to be considered very carefully. An alternative pass system such as, if you are losing the round, you must play a card or forfeit, but if you're in the lead, you can play a card or pass, you can play a card or just pass it to your opponent. So you do not have to play a card, and you don't pass the round, you don't forfeit the round if you pass as a winner, as someone who is in the lead. I think it would be interesting. I definitely would like to think about it more, because that would kind of get around this whole like, oh, my opponent is like, you know, just getting into those second rounds where you're like, your opponent is like 80 points up, but you're still playing these like one dudes and just like, hey, this is trash, I'm just keep playing this and it's gonna be all cool because you got a dead hand and you like thrown in like 3 spies and you're just like, I don't know, playing some dumb banner dudes, and like you're playing some foglets or whatnot. You're just playing some bunch of dudes that didn't work out for you, and your opponent's in the lead and just like, hey, what the hell? I'm just trying to play the least impactful card that I can. And in a way, of course, coin flip is a problem with and that again I believe cannot be solved. I suppose the whole betting system, or that you bet certain points to go first or last, been suggested before. Probably that was the least bad. I personally would like to see at least the first 2 rounds to be balanced. So whoever goes first goes second. Whoever goes first round goes second round. So that would be cool to see. So just in case it's like a 2-0, it's perfectly balanced. But of course, a 3-round game is I don't think it's gonna be perfectly balanced. But you know, at least something would be nice. So I would like to see that. Because of course, being in control of the game is pretty damn important. I believe that's all for now. Tell me what you guys think. Maybe it would have been better if I split it up, but who knows. So, thanks for watching. I'm curious what you guys think, and have a good one.